topic is not not the introduction in the alphabet. It's the nominative case, the accusative case, and the definite article as the three biggest areas of discussion. So here's where we're going to start. We'll start with case endings. If you want to follow along in your book, you can see, of course, in the bottom right, I have BBG, Basics of Biblical Greek, 6.3, page 29. So you can always look there to compare what I'm talking about with Mounts. A lot of times I'll try to connect in with his examples and so forth, some of the things he says. Other times I'll want to give you my own take on things, and so you'll have them to weigh out and come to your own conclusions. And wherever he and I will disagree, you just figure out what works best for you. But for the purpose of the class, there will be times where you'll need to follow my method rather than his method, and those will all be made clear as we go. So we start with case endings, which you've already been a little bit exposed to, so it shouldn't scare you too much. So here it is: Greek nouns, pronouns, adjectives, etc. And this includes virtually all substantives. It includes participles even, are inflected by case, which is determined by the grammatical use of the word in the sentence. If the word functions as the subject of the clause, and it can be a clause, it can be a sentence, it can be a main clause, subordinate clause, whatever. But if the word functions as the subject within that unit, that's ultimately at its most basic a clause, it is inflected into the nominative case. And the example that I'm putting here for you is huios. That's in the nominative. If the word, so there, in that case, if we write huios, it's almost certainly going to be the subject. Destry? Okay, crisis averted. Whew. Thank you, Christina. Points will be awarded in heaven for you. Maybe not from me, but you'll get better ones. Then, if the word, next paragraph, if the word functions as the direct object, it is inflected into what's called, in linguistic terms, the accusative case. So we use those case names all the time in Greek. You will, by the end of the class, you'll know nominative, accusative, dative, genitive, vocative, in and out. So the one debate that we won't get into in this class is there an 8-case system or a 5-case system? That's a question that maybe we'll get to in exegesis if we all live that long. The example of how that would appear with huios, the dictionary form huios, would be huion. So we're inflecting it differently, and we're putting a different consonant at the end, because the sigma is for the nominative case in this situation, and the nun is in the accusative. It goes with the accusative case in this situation. So here are examples at the bottom. Samantha, is it easier to go this way than that way for me? Okay, this will be my way then. Since the class tips this way, I'll tip this way with the class. Perfect analogy for when we have, flood material outside, right? Where you'd be tipping in your boat if you're out in a boat. And certainly you can get home on a boat, probably. Yeah. So hopefully our distance students are not enjoying the rain as much as we are. So here's our first example. Hotas agapa ton huion. And that is God loves the Son. So in this case, I'm just focusing mainly on huios and huion. In this case, huion comes at the end of the sentence, and it doesn't matter where it comes. What's important is its inflected ending. Well, I should say it doesn't matter where it comes for the purpose of knowing what's the subject and what's the direct object. So clearly, this is the accusative case. It's the case of the direct object, so this receives the action. There's the action, loves or goes on loving, either way, depending on context. And the subject is hotos. And that's very clear from the fact that we have the sigma here and the fact that the article confirms that this is a masculine nominative singular. So because it's a nominative, it's got to be the subject. So God loves the Son is the translation. Aaron? Well, not necessarily. This is the sigma goes with the masculine gender and the singular number, right? So if the gender's different and the number's different, it won't be a sigma. Yeah, we'll get to that shortly. Then the next example, ha huyas agapat te'an. So the Son loves literally God. And we'll come to this toward the end of our lesson, but Greek, as I probably already told you, it may have come up once already. Greek will have articles with words, with nouns, for example, that in English we'd never have an article there. So in that case, you just drop the. You're really going to make things too interesting for your reader if you translate, the Son loves the God. Because then the person says, wait a minute, now are you talking about multiple gods? You know, what's at play here? So it's best to drop that for the sake of your reader. And that's part of learning an important process. And students who had me in Hebrew know that I really like to stress this a lot. You have to make this work in the receptor language. It's got to work. If it hasn't worked, you haven't finished your job. It has to be comprehensible English in this case. So you're shooting for that. You're not so literal that you're going to make life really difficult for your reader when you translate. Yeah, you'll sound smart, and you can tell them, I'm sorry, but there is an article there in Greek, right? But you, in the end, will make things only worse for them. So, ha huyas, now this is nominative because of the sigma that's at the end. So ha huyas, that's the subject, that's the verb, that's the direct object. The Son loves God. Okay, any question on that? Pretty cut and dry? All right, obviously we're not into verbs yet, so he, meaning mounts, and I, up here, will be incorporating the use of verbs, but he knows and I know that at this point, well, if he were here, we know that you're not at the place where you're into verbs yet. So it's not expected that you're already chapters ahead. I think it's chapter 12 or more. At least in the old edition, it was 12. I forget what it is in this one. But they will be part of the sentences here and there for your use. And I'll try always to translate them if it's necessary, if it's helpful. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, indeed, we'll move on to word stems. Greek nouns and many other words that are inflected derive from a root stem. For example, the stem of logos is loga. So it's actually a stem ending in a vowel, which makes sense because most languages, whether they're called this or not, are syllabic, where we form words from syllables, and the most standard, not across the board always going to be this way, but the most standard way to communicate a syllable is a consonant first and a vowel second. So it makes sense that this would be the stem because it's law, ga, right? Law, ga. That's the stem, ending in a vowel. So probably, I don't know, I've never done a study of this, and I don't know if I've seen anyone who has, but probably I'll just venture to say most nouns in Greek will end in a vowel in their root form, in the stem itself. So, you won't notice this always if you're always looking at an inflected form. You won't know it, but that's why it's stressed now that you need to realize that that is the true stem. The stem is the part of the word that carries the actual meaning of the word. The way to understand the stem of a noun is to remove the inflected ending from it. And in this case, that's just the sigma that comes off. Mounce's vocabulary sections include the stem by adding an asterisk before it, such as, and you'll see it like this, asterisk loga, asterisk hora. And you'll see this at the end in the vocabulary section of each chapter. For example, if you go to the end of chapter 6, I forget what page number that is, you should be able to see that for yourself right on that page. Anybody have the page number? 40? 40? Okay. Okay, there it is, yes. On 39, you see the places in parentheses where there is that asterisk, right? And then the part of the word that comes after. So that's the stem. So that's one handy place while you're learning vocabulary to see the stem. I don't give that to you on my vocabulary, but it's available if you'd like it. Now, let's say, for example, we're weeks into the class and you say, oh, there's a certain vocabulary word I really, for whatever reason, need to know the stem for it. You may be able to go chapter by chapter through the vocabulary sections looking for that stem. One option is, better option, I think. Let's see, does he have in the back in his, he doesn't really have stems in the glossary. So, since that's not an option, the other option is one of the books I recommended to you, which is, I believe Mounce is the author of it. It's another powder blue book. It's on the morphology of Greek. So if you were to, and you can probably find one nowadays, for, Licking a Promise, really cheap, and buy it, and I think it's a worthy investment. But his morphology on the vocabulary of the New Testament, and there for sure every word alphabetically will be there with its root form. Okay, makes sense? So plan ahead. Steve, maybe you could mention that to Bill. I may never again say it in class, but it's worth knowing that if you're interested in being able to access the stems, which is always a really good thing to be able to do, to have a tool, a resource tool to know the stems, because there are times it will come in handy. Okay. Any question on that? How much? Okay, $19 online. On which site? Okay. I wonder if it's cheaper on Abe. My favorite. Maybe a day or two slower, but not much. Okay, no questions? We're good? The lectionary, you mean the lexicon? Okay. Why is the lexicon in stem form? Oh, why does it not show the stem? Yeah. Can't tell you. Can't tell you. It goes back to whoever the person or persons were in the very beginning who decided how we're going to study Greek. That's what they chose. I think that in this case, they went with the form that's in a sentence that you write in English, of all things. What comes first in the sentence? Boom, subject, right? I think that's what drove the decision. But I don't know if that's documented anywhere. Just my guess on it. Okay, so that's the word stems. Then gender. By the way, before I get into this, yeah, let's talk about English for a second. Whether you know it or not, and you probably do, so I'm not going to teach this today because you know it. English does not inflect for gender. Now, there are situations, there are words where we will add as if there were gender. For example, a boat. What gender do we use when we talk of a boat or a ship? She. Yeah, we use the feminine form. So there are little vestiges there. But the rule is we don't inflect for gender. In fact, ha ha ha. Some of you will get a kick out of this, and cat lovers like Destry may come storming after me after class, but we bought a little cat this summer. Gorgeous little Russian blue. I love it. It lays and sleeps on my chest. I lay down and it sleeps right on my chest. It's really awesome. Very affectionate. It's a female. But when I speak of the cat with my wife or my daughter in the house, I will use the pronoun it. Well, that drives my daughter crazy. And she tries to correct me and says, Dad, this cat is a female. You have to call her a she. And my reply to her is, Danielle, you need to learn English language. That is a personal pronoun. The personal pronouns in singular are he, she, and it in the objective case. That's what we say in English rather than nominative, right? He, she, and it. He and she are called personal pronouns. You have to have personhood to use a personal pronoun. A cat, a dog, a giraffe, an ant is an it. That's how English works. Now, you can do what you want to do, of course, but you're correcting me improperly in this case because we don't inflect like that for gender. Okay? So, what about Greek? Greek nouns possess grammatical gender, either being masculine, feminine, or neuter. A Greek noun has only one gender, which does not vary. So, meaning any particular noun, that's the rule. The rule is that you're only going to see it masculine, or you're only going to see it feminine, or you're only going to see it neuter. That's the rule. However, a small number of words appears both in masculine or feminine. Now, you've just learned the first important rule of Greek grammar, which is, in Greek, to every rule is usually an exception. It's very rare when there are no exceptions to a rule. Welcome to Greek. Hope you enjoy it. Keep your hands inside as the car is traveling. So often these exceptional forms are found with foreign loan words. Does that make sense? Foreign loan words? Some, let's say we live in the land of Israel. No, Greek. Let's say we live in Macedonia. Let's say we live in Macedonia. Great. Part of Macedonia was in Yugoslavia, the land of my forefathers. So Macedonia. Let's say we're in Macedonia, and now I have to remember what I was going to say. That happens a lot. Foreign loan words, yes. And somebody comes from Italy, and the guy only speaks Latin, right? So he speaks his Latin word. Well, let's say I've never seen it written before, so I'm going to transliterate it into Greek, right? And for me, maybe my concept of that word is masculine. I don't know Latin. And so I make it masculine. Somebody else comes along and they hear that word from that Latin speaker or a different Latin speaker, that same word, and he or she writes down what's heard in Greek, right? Transliterates. And that person thinks, okay, that should be a feminine, right? So that kind of thing happens. So that being the case, if that kind of a word ends up being inflected, it's possible that you could have a masculine and a feminine form for it because of that dynamic of a different language connecting with Greek. Does that make sense? So it's usually with foreign loan words that you would see such an exception. With Greek, with truly Greek words, I don't know of any exceptions to this. Maybe there are, I just either don't remember them or don't know them. All right. Since these exceptions are not important for now, they will be discussed later in the study of Greek. So we'll come to such words along the way, and you'll notice. Number. As with English, Greek features singular and plural number. For those of you who were in Hebrew, you remember that Hebrew has what other number? Dual, for pairs. 2 hands, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 legs. Anything that comes in dual is put into this paired number. But Greek doesn't have that like English. It's just singular or plural. So it's 2 and above is plural, 1 is singular. English typically, that's got to be has, I think. English typically has an S. Oh, no, adds, it should be. Adds an S to the end of a noun to go from singular to plural. In Greek, singular and plural are distinguished by a difference in inflection. That's how to show the difference. The masculine noun huios, son, is nominative singular, huios, right? You see the os ending, and in masculine, you know that, or because of the form, you know that's a masculine nominative singular. While its nominative plural counterpart is huioi, which is sons. So if you want to take one son, your huios, and now talk about your 3 sons, you'll call them your huioi. Okay? You have 3 huioi. If you do, more power to you. You're going to have a lot of cleanup, a lot of dishes to wash. Sons are not good at washing dishes, I've learned. Okay. Any question on number? Singular and plural. So with nouns, you always have to deal with that. Is it 1 sheep or 3 sheep? Is it, 2 children or 4 children? So number will make a difference, and has to be divided out for clarity. Declensions. As with most languages, English has more than one pattern for making singular nouns plural. For example, while most nouns become plural by adding s or es, such as, and we saw an example with an s, right? And here's an example with an es. Church goes to churches because of the consonantal cluster there at the end of church. It's more, Russian word udobna. It's like comfortable for you to add the E before the S. So you need to add that vowel to connect the final consonant cluster of church with the S ending. So now you're looking at a different option for how to make something plural, essentially. Some nouns become plural by changing the stem vowel, such as A to E. In man, for 1, goes to men when you have 2 or more. So here we're not adding the S, but we're still making it plural. It's just a different, now let's bring in a term we use in Greek. It's a different declension. It's a different way of declining the noun for number. So the standard method is an S. Sometimes you'll have the ES. Sometimes you'll have the vowel change. And so these are examples of different declensions, if you will, for pluralizing in English. Still, another pattern is to add a different suffix to the stem, such as REN. If you take the word child and you turn it into more than 1, you have children. So there's another option in English. So you can see that there are a lot of ways in English to make something plural. And if you study another language and you start to find their multiplicity of ways to make something plural, it gives you a real headache. So you can imagine for non-English speakers learning English, it's a challenge to learn all these different ways. Why don't we just add an S all the time, they would say. And you may say the same when you study Greek or another language. So Greek nouns are divided into inflectional patterns known as declensions. So this is a good word to know. Hopefully I'll be saying it so often that it will be, it will be like, the easiest words that you could ever, one of the easiest words you could ever know. So with nouns, with adjectives, we have declensions. And that's one area where I you'll see that I differ a little bit from Mounts. He'll use the word parsing for declensions, and I will use the word declining. So that's just one nuance difference. Okay, let's look further at this notion of declensions in Greek. And this is 6.7, page 29, if you're following along in your book. Nouns with a stem ending in alpha or eta are called first declension nouns, more or less, okay? So don't take this as a rule without exception, but more or less, every noun you see ending in a or a in its nominative form will be a first declension noun. Nouns with a stem ending in omicron are called second declension nouns. Nouns whose stem ends in a consonant are called third declension nouns. And we won't be looking at third declension nouns until chapter 10, so there's really no need to worry about the third declension. But this goes back to what I said before. Remember, we talked about stems for nouns, and I said, probably fair to say that most nouns in Greek end in a vowel because of this syllabic dynamic. Consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. So, because of that, we shouldn't be surprised that an alpha is at the end of the stem or an eta is at the end of the stem, and that's going to be first declension. Oh, and those are both vowels. And then another vowel, omicron, when it comes at the end, that's signifying to us second declension. Nouns whose stem ends in a consonant are called third declension nouns. Yep, I already mentioned that. Okay, so now let's look at an example or two. So we come to what's below, and we have he hora estin nun. Yes, the hour is now, is the translation. So hora ends in alpha. So what declension is it? First declension. Good. Ahuias lege ton logon. The son speaks the word. Their son is speaking the word. So huios, what declension? Yep, second declension. Logon. Oh, look at this. I've written it for you. I'm asking you. I should be looking at the fine print. That's what everybody says. Look at the fine print. And I didn't do it. Okay, so logon comes from logos, which of course is a masculine noun. So it's second declension. So that's how Greek is typically studied, with these declensions, and then there's the first and second declension. Yes, Karen. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. So Karen, what we need to do here is we need to pull off the sigma, because the true root is huia. That's the stem. Yes. And same with logon. Take the noon off. There's the omicron. Sorry, I should have made that clear. Yeah. That's the problem in teaching for so long. You forget what people know and don't know, and you sometimes don't explain what should be explained. All right. Well, and I will do my best, especially if I have my clicker. There we go. All right. Two types of feminine first declension. Now, for this, actually, I'm going to want you to have page 34 handy in your book if you have your book. If you don't, you could look on with a neighbor. So, first declension feminine nouns come in two types. The eta type, which is more common, and the alpha type. Now, if you, okay, looking ahead into the future, you need to know something about the way I process Greek. Oftentimes, there's a paradigmatic word that's used for something. So for me, I will refer to a graphe type of word, right? So let's see, where's my good markers? That's my bad one, I think. Thank you. Okay, so graphe, So graphe, that is ending in eta, right? Whereas doxa ends in alpha. So for me, the two paradigmatic words for this declension, the two forms of the feminine declension, are graphe type, I'll use that term, and doxa type. So you may want to make a mental note or a written note or both, because I will be using these expressions and you'll kind of need to be clued back into it. So there are lots of eta ending feminine nouns, and there are plenty of, let's say, alpha ending feminine nouns, but I'm just going to refer to the whole category of them as either a graphe type or a doxa type. Clear? Okay. Clarity is always important. The identity of the final stem vowel in the singular forms a mere cosmetic change is the only difference in these types. In other words, the fact that we can change from eta to alpha in the singular, that's the only thing going on here. It's not as though you have some different major class of feminine nouns from one to the other. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing, no fireworks, nothing, exegetically exciting here. It's just two different forms, two different methods in the singular. All right, any question on the two types of first declension?
The first declension is the single, and the second declension is the plural.
No, nothing to do with it. So it's basically gender. You want to break this down mostly by gender. So the first declension is almost always going to be feminine. Second declension is almost always going to be masculine or neuter. And then the third declension is almost always going to be neuter. And so neuter is between the second declension and the third declension. Yeah, the stem is going to end in a consonant, right? So neuter words that end in a vowel will usually follow the second declension. In other words, they'll borrow from, I just thought of Serena Williams for some reason, if anybody was watching the US Open this weekend. Yeah, it was dramatic. Okay, I lost my train of thought. It worked. So, oh man, that must have been something good I was saying. But anyway, you get the picture, right? Okay. So any other question on first declension feminine nouns? Yeah, so neuter can borrow the masculine forms if it's a stem ending in a vowel. Anything else I wanted to say to you about this? Oh, yeah, there are exceptions to all of this. For example, this word, I don't know. Have you come in contact with the word prophet yet in Greek? What is it? Ha prophetes, right? So that word, notice what's going on here. Oops, once again. Esmeralda, I endow you with the charge of that so I don't pick it up and use it. Por favor. Okay, so so prophetes, look what's going on here. What do you see that's red flag city? Masculine article. And this looks like what? Feminine because of the eta. Aha. But remember I told you this? Remember this? The article is a flag waving in the wind. The article will remove all doubt and will stand true all the time. So the article is what you go with to determine gender of this word. Always trust the article. There is a rule to which I know of no example, Samantha. How's that? Maybe the hope, or for me, one or the other. Yes, always have to have hope. So that is masculine nominative singular ha, And ace is what you'd expect with a feminine, but you can't call it a feminine because of the article. So the way to understand this and to resolve it is that this is a first declension masculine noun. This is a first declension masculine noun, prophetes. So welcome to exception land for the rule of first declension. It's not always feminine. And that's just one example. There are others. The word sheep also is a first declension feminine, and there's more beyond that. Yes. That's a good question. Not that I know of, Samantha, but let me put that one on the burner and think if there's anything that of significance there. Kathy? No. Aha. Good question. So, here are two words. Actually, it's not in the lesson, but it's worth writing down. Articular and anarthrous. We'll just put that in parentheses. Sometimes you can use the word noun following that. Sometimes it's just understood. So Greek nouns are either going to be, I don't know of a third possibility, they're either going to be articular or they're going to be, anarthrous. Articular means it has an article with it. Whenever the Greek writer wants it this way, and it's usually according to his knowledge of the Greek language and how it works and whether it's best to have an article or not have an article, he or she has the opportunity to not omit, but to not include an article with a noun. And we'll talk about that more as it comes, but you could have the noun there with no article. Then it's more difficult to know its gender. And in this case, you just have to know this as an exception, that this word is a first declension masculine noun. Okay, make sense? Good question. Without the article, it's still masculine. Yes, it's still masculine. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a completely different word. And that will have a distinctly feminine ending, and it will have a feminine article going with it, if it's included in the sentence, in the writing of the noun. Okay. So did I walk through all of this? I forget. Well, I'll review the last sentence if I already said it. Notice that eta type nouns take alpha as their stem vowel in plural cases. Plural cases being like nominative, accusative, and genitive, and dative, and all that. So what do we mean there? Look on page 34. Look at the top. Do you see the eta type noun? Remember, I used that word graphe type. There's the word graphe itself. So the word graphe is declined here using the graphe type, the eta ending. And so you look in the plural for this. So graphe is the feminine nominative singular. Graphane is the feminine accusative singular. But look at the feminine nominative plural. Graphi with an alpha. Then the accusative plural. Graphos with an alpha. So it revert in the plural, that's if you want to think of it this way. In the plural, graphe type nouns revert back to the alpha. And in lieu of the expected eta that you would otherwise anticipate to be there. Okay? Make sense? As a rule, are there exceptions? Maybe. As a rule, yes. General rule. All right. Case endings for first and second declension. So this is a chart, just an initial chart. I really would prefer, as much as I'd like to encourage you to memorize this, I'd like you to default from that so far. Why? Because we're going to add genitive and dative here. And I'm always going to use the order nominative, genitive, dative, accusative in the cases. So I don't want you learning accusative as second and putting genitive third and dative fourth. Does that make sense? So if you want to learn this, to memorize it, I'd suggest you put the genitive and the dative in. You know, go ahead in the book, go forward in the book if you want, but wait until we get to there. I am going to give you a handout with all of this on there. Actually, this is another file that disappeared. Among my handout files for Greek, there's one of them at least. I can't think of any others right away. That was completely gone from my inventory of handouts for you. Literally gone, just gone. And this probably is due to twice since the time I taught Greek last, I had major computer issues where the hard drive was completely, injured, physically injured, and so there was damage created. So probably it's a file that just randomly got damaged in that. But anyway, I'll look in all of my old notes to see if I've got a photocopy of that chart. Then I can easily reproduce it for you. If not, I'm just going to have to start from scratch and try to reproduce that the way I had it before. Mm-hmm. Accusative. Does he follow that? He does? Oh, good. I forgot that. Good. Okay. Yeah, a lot of books don't, a lot of teachers don't use that model. But I think it's the best one. Okay. So what do we have? So this is essentially 2-1-2. So masculine is second declension. Feminine is first declension. Graphe type, doxa type. And then neuter nouns ending in a vowel are of the second declension. In other words, similar to the masculine. Slightly different, but similar to the masculine. So the difference, though, and well, I guess we'll start here. So masculine in the nominative singular is os. In the accusative singular, on. In the nominative plural, oi. In the accusative plural, us. The masculine, second declension. And of course, prophetes is an example. Oh, mathetes, a disciple. That's another first declension masculine noun. So our graphe type, a in the nominative singular, ain in the accusative singular, I. Remember, it borrows the alpha from the doxa type here in the plural. I, that's a diphthong in the nominative plural, and then the accusative plural, as. So, and then the doxa type varies only in this vowel here and here. Otherwise, it's the same. So neuter is where it gets tricky. Notice how for this, for example, a, on, I, as, all different. A, ain, I, as, all different. Os, on, oi, us, all different. In the neuter, that differentness slightly goes away. On and on is how you'll see the nominative singular and the accusative singular. So what's your rule of thumb going to be when you see a word that ends in on and it's a noun? And if it's a neuter? Well, if it is a neuter. Because on could be the masculine accusative singular, but if it's certainly a neuter, how are you going to know between nominative and accusative? The article is going to be the same also. Yeah. So what? No. Text, exactly. Hebrew. Catherine remembers that from Hebrew. Yes. Okay, so that's on and on in the singular, nominative and accusative, and then the nominative plural and accusative plural are both going to be a. with no consonant here. So notice that versus this. The first declension feminine doxa type, that's the nominative singular, right? Your article is going to be what helps you there if it's articular. If it's not articular, context. Yeah. Context, and then at that point, hopefully it's a vocabulary word you know, and you'll know if it's neuter or feminine. Okay? Start as it stands today. And again, hopefully we will have this once we, by the time we get to genitive and dative, for sure I'll have a handout for you on that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay. Good question. And Stephen, I think the answer there is at its root form, at its most grammatically accurate, the first table is truest. Those are the endings added to the stem. But we remember that the stems are almost all end in vowels, right? So what we, for the sake of simplicity, want to do is memorize that vowel ending, because the vowel ending can change. It can be an omicron, an alpha, or an eta, right? So because of that variance, it's better to memorize, I think, and many people would agree with me on this, better to memorize the final stem vowel together with the ending that inflects for case. Make sense? So and I think that's why he gives you both. He gives you the raw form at its truest, and then he gives you, this is best to learn and memorize. For the sake of, there's overall more value to memorizing this than the first one. So I think you'll see that to be true in time. Any other question? Okay, good. Dalsze, as we say in Russian, further. An important grammatical skill to develop with Greek is the ability to decline, and here's where I differ from Mounts, to decline nouns and other substantives, and to parse verbs and verbals. So there's my delineation. Here is the sequence to follow in this class. For me, I will be asking you, if I ever ask you to decline a noun, give me the gender, the case, the number, the lexical form, and the inflected meaning. So, gender, case, number, lexical form, and inflected meaning. So the gender, at this point, all you know is nominative and accusative. The case, oops, I forgot to flip. I had a combination here of following my own order and then following his. So the case, so flip masculine, feminine, neuter, that's all the options. You've already now learned all the options, been exposed to. Number, singular or plural. Then lexical form, of course the lexical form is in the nominative singular. That's for a noun, how you know. You'll find it in your lexicon or your dictionary. And then finally, what is its inflected meaning in the context? So let's put this into practice. I'm going to go in reverse to do that, so don't look too as I flip fast. Okay, huios. This is a masculine nominative singular, right? That's the order. Masculine, gender, nominative case, singular number. From in dictionary form, huios. Only difference is the accent mark will be like this. It'll be an acute rather than a grave. And the inflected meaning is son. So that's how you parse. No, that's how Mouse would parse. That's how you decline a noun in Greek. Here, log on. Masculine accusative singular and not neuter, right? Because I know that this comes from logos. So it's not neuter, it's masculine. It's masculine accusative singular from logos, and its meaning is word. Even though it's the direct object, the meaning is still the same in English because we don't have a way of inflecting in English. If it were another language that inflects for case, like Russian, you'd have to give that differently, but it's just word. So it's the same in the same inflected meaning in English if it were the subject or the direct object in this case. Karen. Lexical form, what does that mean? Yeah, how it appears in the dictionary. So with the study of Greek, we've made things difficult for English students by substituting for where you'd expect dictionary, lexicon is what you'd be exposed to. So lexical is then the adjectival form of the noun lexicon, right? So that's how this works. So I'll flip those for the slideshow when I give it to you, hopefully. Hopefully I'll catch that. Declining neuter nouns. Since neuter nouns have identical forms, and you saw this already on the chart, right? Have identical forms in nominative and accusative singular, and as well in nominative and accusative plural, on, endings. This complicates the declining process. The best way to handle this is to decline both possibilities, then circle, and this would be, for example, on an exam where you have a piece of paper. So if I'm asking you, let's say I asked you to decline it, you would write, if it's an ending, right? You would say that that's a neuter, nominative, or accusative plural in declining. But I would ask you, if I were to ask you to do this on the exam, I would ask you, can you circle the right one if there's a context in which the word is found? Excuse me. Does that make sense? If it's a word written in a context and there's an ending, right? An ending, and the context will tell you whether that's the subject or the direct object, then you need to circle the one that it is, right? So you're showing me you know both options, and you're showing me you know how to determine which option is correct in the context. So I'm looking for precision from you. That shows a greater ability you have to understand how the language is working. Okay. Yes.
Is the lexical form
Nominative. Always nominative. Always nominative, yes. And I think I wrote that 34 in red to reference something on page 34 here. What was it I wanted you to see? Oh, I just wanted you, while you're looking at this slide, to compare it to the final column at the top in 614. Ergon, ergon, erga, erga, right? That's a nice word used in the word for work that's, declined here for you in its various forms. That will show you what's going on here when I'm talking about the on versus the ah. All right, any other question on declining neuter nouns? This is a big lesson today. All right, we have a couple more to go. Indeclinable nouns. Some Greek nouns are indeclinable, which means that their stems are not inflected. That is, there are no case endings added. Often this occurs with foreign loanwords such as proper nouns. Some examples of this include Israel and Jerusalem, which are not inflected. You'll never see, I don't think, Israelos or Israelon or Israelah or anything like that. They're not declined according to case. They're just frozen in time as a root form, a stem form. And again, usually this is because it's a foreign word that's been brought into Greek. The form of these words will not be altered according to case usage within a sentence. So these will be their forms whether the noun, such as Israel, is used as the subject, nominative case, the direct object, the accusative case, or any other of the cases that we'll be learning. So it will have that form consistently. And what would help you most to be able to know which case it should be? The article. That's what would help you the most to know. And if you can't rely, if there's no article, if it's anarthrous, then you have to rely on your contextual skills to know where it fits in a sentence. Mm-hmm. Christos, it's declined. Mm-hmm. Ye, it's declined. Those are declined. Why those are and these aren't, I don't know. Just the way it works. I wasn't part of the decision. They did not consult me. You'd think they would have, but they didn't. All right, word order. Many students and or teachers of Greek will say that word order does not matter. I've heard it myself, so I'm not just making that up. I'm not citing anybody here, not putting anybody, under the bus. But many will say that word order does not matter in Greek because of its detailed inflection into cases. This is not true. Word order does matter as it shows emphasis. And the standard position of emphasis, the emphatic position in Greek is what? The initial position, the first word. That is the position of emphasis in Greek. So if you see a word, especially a subject or the typical word order will have the noun, the subject first. But if it varies from that, it's there are times that it's still going to be emphatic, even if it's a nominative. But if it varies from that, and let's say an accusative word is put at the beginning, then the author, the writer, speaker, is wanting you to have that word jump out of the page at you. That's the most important word in the sentence. So let's say we have this. Now, if we're going to translate it, what's the subject of this? God, tell us. Yes, this. How do we know that? Because it's nominative, which is shown to us by. Okay, so there's two things that work here. Sigma tells us that, yes, that it's a masculine nominative singular, and the article is our flag saying, I'm confirming that this is masculine nominative singular. So that's the subject. So in English, because English not always, but usually follows a strict word order policy, which is what? What's our word order in English? SVO, subject, verb, object, or direct object. Yes. So in English, we translate this first, God, then we go to our verb, loves, and then we'd go to our direct object in the case, God loves Messiah, or the anointed one. Literally, that's what it would be. God loves the anointed one. So, just because Messiah comes first does not make it the subject. So that's the flaw that you could easily operate by, because in English, you're used to the first noun you come to is the subject, right? So don't fall into that trap. That's what this teaches you. That's one thing it teaches you. Only the word in nominative case will be the subject, hateos. Here, Messiah, or the anointed one, is in the accusative case as the direct object. But word order is showing you something here. It's varying the word order to scream out at you so that you know the most important thing that I want you to read, is the word Christon. So you could even translate it into English this way. There are words, there are translations of certain things, certain passages in especially the King James that do this. Oh boy, I always mix up the words here. Wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many are those who enter by it. Yeah, have you heard that from the King James? That's putting the predicate nominative first and the subject second. Wide is the way. Literally, the way is the subject there. The way is wide. So you're switching that to reflect the emphasis there, even in English. And in that case, the English King James translators followed the literal Greek order, which puts the predicate nominative first. So it's more accurate. It's showing the emphasis there in that translation. But because that's it's such a seldomly practiced way of speaking in English nowadays that you hardly see anybody do it. But you could translate this. The anointed one, God loves, right? You could do that. And certainly if you're preaching, and this is your part of your text, you need to tell the people that this is here. The anointed one, God loves. The writer is separating the anointed one from all other people. That's the emphasis. He uniquely is the one God loves that he's talking about at this moment. All right, so that is what I wanted to say about word order. Whatever Mount says, so let it be. But that's my take on word order. Lexical forms, somebody asked about this. In Greek lexicons or dictionaries, they will list the nouns with the nominative case and singular number. This is reflected in the vocabulary list that I've given you. Thus, you will find theos, God, with a smaller capital G, however the context works, in nominative singular, rather than theon, God, in accusative singular, or theoi, gods, in nominative plural. So, which one will be in there in the dictionary? Not that one. Not that one. Only this one. That's the point. Okay? So expect to see that in your lexicons. Oh, yeah, okay. There's one thing I forgot to pull out. Unlike English, which features, so definite article. Now this is our, not final slide, but our last major area to talk about. Unlike English, which features an indefinite article, a or an is used when? Yeah, right. When the next word that follows this word begins with a vowel, don't say a or a, say an icicle, an igloo, an arthropod, is that? An apple, yeah. So that's our indefinite article in English. And English has a definite article, the, always that way. It's not going to vary, just the. Singular, plural, whatever case usage always will be the same. Greek possesses only the definite article. In other words, there is no indefinite article in Greek. You need to know that. If the Greek writer wants to express indefiniteness, he will use an anarthrous construction. But, really important, but just because a word is anarthrous does not require the understanding that it has to be an indefinite noun there. That's not true. So if that doesn't make sense to you, hold that thought. We'll get to it later when it comes with examples, and I'll show that to be true. However, this article inflects according to gender, case, and number. So the Greek article inflects according to gender, case, and number. And here is the chart of what the article is going to look like. For masculine, ha, ton in nominative and accusative singular, hoi and tous in nominative and accusative plural. Ha, ton, hoi, tous. Once again, wait till we get genitive and dative before you memorize this, please. First declension feminine, he, tain for singular, and hi, tas for plural. Ta, uh-oh. Does that look familiar? Just like with our neuter endings added to nouns, so with the neuter nominative singular, nominative and accusative singular, we have the exact same article. So again, the article here can't fully help you. It will help distinguish from genitive and dative, which you can't really appreciate now, but later you will. But you have to context of, is that a nominative or is that an accusative when I see ta, if it's an article? And then ta and ta, same deal. Now we have two more forms that are similar, nominative plural and the accusative plural. So those are the articles. And they will be very useful to you. You will come to love articles. I do. I love articles. I just love them. No, that's honest. Yeah. Yes, they're very helpful. Translational procedure. Translating Greek constructions can be quite intimidating because now you're at the point where you're, believe it or not, you're ready to translate small little baby sentences. So it can be intimidating, which means you have to have a strategy in place that's useful to be able to know how to tackle all of this. Well, one of the best strategies to solve this problem is to divide and conquer. It's the same principle that's used in Joshua's day. I suppose you could attribute it to Joshua, but really, technically, you want to attribute it to God. What am I talking about? When the Israelites crossed the Jordan River and ended up in Canaan, and at the beginning, of course, they were in the Jordan Rift Valley. They had to climb out of that and go into the hill country, central mountain spine. But when they proceeded to conquer the land so that it could become theirs, they used a strategy. And again, because God was the commander of the armies God used the commander of the armies of He who is, according to chapter 5, the most important chapter, the most important passage in the entire book of Joshua. The commander of the armies of He who is, he met with Joshua, appeared before him. And Joshua just boom, went down. He knew who this was. And basically, the commander told him, I've got this. I've got this. Who appeared before Joshua? Pre-incarnate Christ. Pre-incarnate, second member of the Trinity. That's who appeared before Joshua. It was his battle to fight. That's what he was telling Joshua. I'm going to essentially take out all these people who are here, the men, the women, the children. I'm going to use your swords in some cases, but I'm the one who's going to go before you. You don't have to worry that you're not warriors, that all you have is plowshares and, whatever, sickles. You don't have swords, double-edged swords. You don't have javelins, and you don't have, all the military might. I will win the battle for you. So in all of that, God's strategy through the commander was to cut a line in Canaan east to west, or actually, east to west. And so it was divide and then conquer. Cut them in half, establish that line, go down and do the southern campaign, and then go above that line and do the northern campaign. That was God's strategy. That's a wonderful military strategy, divide and conquer. So you can use that, believe it or not, in Greek. What does that mean? Separate words from one another. So on a major separation level, ha-os, because these words go together, we would put our first separation here. That's a unit. That, you don't know this right now, but that's a verb. It's a future tense verb. And that's a unit. So let's say I just tell you it's the verb. Okay, separate it. The verb is a unit. Separate that. And now you have another noun, ends in os. You've seen os today. Os, right? It's feminine, isn't it? So that's your first level of dividing. Then you go to your second level of dividing. And actually, I should have put a red divider here to separate the article from the noun. So hopefully I'll remember to put one in there. There should be one there. And then now you're going to separate out, not, Steve, just the ending, the sigma, but the os, as you're learning as a unit, even though this is part of the stem. The os is going to tell you masculine, nominative, singular. So is the stem for the verb. The sigma is added as the stem, if it's the concept, that's the stem formative for the future. So this in the present tense. So the sigma is added to the stem, and then after the stem formative is the ending according to person and number. So what you don't know yet is this is third person singular. The A ending is third person singular. Because it's future, that tells us future. Because it's future, it's will save, and that's third person singular. He, she, or it will save. And then you come over to suchas, divide here, because our as is what we have in our chart as one of our inflected endings for the feminine. So masculine, nominative, singular, that's our verb. Suchas, that's a what? Let's go look. Here. True? So that's accused under feminine. Where did we go? There. It's feminine accusative plural. So God is the subject, will save is the verb, souls plural, and the gender, of course, into English doesn't translate, so it's just God will save souls. Make sense? Oh, and I just looked and it's right. I have to change. Okay, any question on that? Last slide. Postpositives. Greek sentences and clauses often contain words that in English should begin a sentence. These are called postpositives. One such postpositive was learned already in the vocabulary, which is de. That's one of your words you know, right? And or but, mainly. Here is how a clause may read. This is crazy. Ha, de, apen. That's a verb, and it means he, she, or it said. It's a past tense. What's the article here? Ha. And then this is, do you remember what that is? Grammatically? Conjunction. In English, where does the conjunction go in a clause? Well, in the middle of a complex sentence, but in its own clause, it goes in the beginning. Yeah, it introduces the clause. So in English, you have to transpose. This goes here, the de. It's postpositive. So and or but, now we have to have a subject because that's the verb said. What's our subject? It's hidden within the article. Literally, the one. And it's masculine. So it's a masculine person. So at its most elementary, I'd want you to say, but the one said, or and the one said. That's literal. But if you want to contextualize, then it's okay to downgrade that to he, because it's, that's the equivalent, and it's more common English. Okay, any question on that? All right, I apologize that this was so long. You can blame me, and maybe I'll take the blame, but I'm just going with what Mounts gave you, and I don't want to shaft you and only give you part of the lesson for time's sake. So I apologize that it was so long. We don't really have time to go over now with our exercises. You didn't have to. All you had to do is transcribe, right? Do I remember correctly? All you had to do is write down, copy letters and that, copy words. True? Yeah, yeah. So you're just transposing or transcribing, right? Okay, so there's nothing really I need to go over on that with you, right? Whew, it's a good thing because we wouldn't have time. We're already way out, we're a little over. And I do apologize for that. So for next time, oh, and before you leave, be sure you give me the percentage of the exercise that you did. If you're a non-auditor or an auditor who wants me to track your work, make sure you tell me your percentage before you leave. And for those distant, please send me an email and I'll jot that down. So for next time, read chapter 7, complete chapter 6 exercises, and I didn't even have time, to be honest, to look at that. Hopefully it's nothing scary. Quiz 4 from chapter 7 vocabulary. So I will send you the quiz by, let's say, by 3 or 4 in the afternoon, my time tomorrow. I will send you the quiz at the latest. I'll put myself out on the chopping block. I do not have your quiz number 2 graded yet, but I'll hopefully have quiz 2 and 3 graded and returned to you on Thursday. Deal? Okay. Any final questions, comments, disagreements? Good. Yes, you can. You are on the road. All right, who would like to close us in prayer? Okay.
Dear Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for Dr. Petrovich teaching us. We just pray for all of us that we just continue to be diligent in our work, and that you just bless our diligence with retention, the ability to bring to mind everything that we're learning here quickly and efficiently. Better Bible readers, better Bible teachers, just better followers of your word. That's the goal. So we look to you as our hope and guide. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday.